After becoming sessionable, I followed the grade chart to go up the bridge through auditing, reaching OT7, and becoming cause over life, despite stops and arbitraries. This sentence means little to you or to me, but for members of the Church of Scientology, language like that is commonplace. In fact, they have thousands upon thousands of unique terms and definitions. Scientology is a subject of fascination. You may have heard of them from the news or celebrities like Tom Cruise. They're known for their big, flashy programs, cult-like mysteries, and centers like this one, just a short drive away in Tel Aviv. Scientology is a new religion founded in 1952 by the enigmatic L. Ron Hubbard. It promises to unlock the mysteries of life and revolves around its foundational text, Dianetics, which promises to be the modern science of mental health. It's come under fire countless times in past years for its cult-like behavior and the sheer dedication of its members. Its organization, in fact, requires its members to sign billion-year contracts. It's been called a scam, a business, a cult. It's one of the most fascinating movements on earth. To me, the most fascinating part of Scientology is their language, especially when considering linguistic relativity. Linguistic relativity, or alternatively, the Whorf Hypothesis, is the idea that language can influence or determine cognitive thought. Its founder, Benjamin Whorf, examined it on a broad syntactical level. He claimed that native speakers of different languages can perceive things in fundamentally different ways. His theories haven't been without their fair share of criticism, but regardless, the idea that the language we use can deeply affect us rings true. After reviewing scholarly work, I found that Whorf's ideas go down to a more basic level than just a syntactical one. In fact, I found that there's an array of different word categories which have each been proven to have a specific linguistic behavioral effect, and I'll get back to them later. In the research that I conducted this year, I wanted to find how the concepts of Whorf Hypothesis can be combined with Scientology's unique language to provide some insight on what motivates its members and how those words might be powerful in ways that we can't imagine. So I did what's called a thematic content analysis. I found an internal video intended only for Scientologists and leaked through WikiLeaks, pitching one of its main centers of learning called FLAG. I watched this video a bunch of times and recorded every single unique Scientology term that was spoken. I organized this long list by frequency, and then coded it by one of the 6 categories I'll be talking about in a minute. I decided to look at 50 words specifically, and here's a word cloud demonstrating them. Now, each of these words have a specific effect that go beyond just what the meaning of the word is. I could talk about each of them in their own merit for as long as we have light left in the day, but I'll focus on one for the sake of example. That's the one at the bottom right here, the bridge. What do you think of when you think of the word bridge? What are the implications or the associations so often talked about by Benjamin Whorf that come to mind? Firstly, the word bridge implies a destination. It's the movement of one initial point to another, to a desired point. It also implies elevation, going over something. This fits perfectly in line with what Scientology wants out of its own definition of the word bridge. That bridge is the bridge to total freedom, also called the grade chart. It's a step-by-step outline of all the programs and processes that you can buy your way into as a Scientologist in order to unlock new abilities, new levels of teaching, and new understandings. So you can already start to see how using the word bridge, or bridge to total freedom, versus a more neutral term like the grade chart, can make Scientologists feel swept up in the movement, like they're going somewhere, like they're reaching a destination. Now, taking a step back a bit, I want to go through the categories that I mentioned and discuss the effects and how I got to the conclusions that I just said. There are 6 I looked at specifically. First was polysemes. Polysemes in normal English are words that have multiple definitions. In the Scientology context, it means a word that has one specific English definition and one specific Scientology definition, both of which are totally distinct, but the question of which one is the correct one can often be confused. The effect of this is a perception of ambiguity, as the listener or observer doesn't know which word is being said. A similar effect goes for acronyms or abbreviations, which can cause feelings of exclusivity, inferiority, or superiority, as again, the observer or listener doesn't know the real full thing of the word that's being talked about, and the person speaking has the authority in the situation. Pseudoscientific words can create senses of legitimacy or complexity despite a lack of coherency in the meanings. Emotive terms can compel certain emotions and feelings about a topic. In my paper, I discuss forward-moving hyperboles that, again, make Scientologists feel swept up in the movement. Euphemisms can decrease anxiety around a topic, as the person speaking is more likely to be able to and to be willing to discuss the said topic instead of using a more brash or harsh sounding term. So those are the 6 categories. At the end of my research, I found that there's a total of 120 potential terms used a total of 431 times in a video that's only 36 minutes long. That's one Scientology speak term every 5 seconds, and that's just one microcosm of what's spoken every day in the organization. Now, as a whole, I came to the conclusions that Scientologists are more likely to express feelings of exclusivity, superiority, and that their language can, again, imply complexity and legitimacy despite the lack of it in their real meanings. This is all fine and great and really important for Scientologists to know so that they can better reflect on their motivations. But I'm here today to tell you that those implications extend to our everydays, all our everydays. You see, we're exposed to this kind of loaded language in every way, in college emails, in marketing, in journalism. Let's take an example. Don't you think it's interesting that Dunkin' Donuts' slogan is "America runs on donuts"? Don't you think that the word "run" here is an interesting choice of words? Again, I'd like you to think for a moment. What's it implying? What's it saying? Run implies athleticness, movement. It's totally contradictory to our perception of what the word run implies and what donuts are supposed to do. Again, think for a moment about the different kinds of advertisements that you see all the time that have this kind of loaded effect. And let's take another example, perhaps a more terrifying one, and I can't make this up. Just last week, the US Department of Energy tried to rebrand fossil fuels as molecules of freedom. Seriously, molecules of freedom. The Energy Secretary even compared the giving of natural gas to Europe as liberating concentration camps in Europe in World War II. It's crazy. And that's just another example, perhaps a more blatant one, of how loaded language permeates our everyday. Often it goes over our heads, and yet it affects our behaviors, our perceptions, our assumptions. We're here today to talk about the power of youth. With all the responsibilities that accompany running the future, one that's often overlooked is the ability to digest the past. In order to overcome the biases and barking in our ears, we must first recognize the innate influence of language. How one word over another has unique power. Scientology might seem irrelevant to our day-to-day. Many of you may not have even heard of them before coming into this room. But their language teaches us something about how valuable it is to choose our words carefully for fear of it having some unintended effect. And that is a very powerful thing. Thank you.